Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and a whole bunch of other venues. Just visit our sites, chimeraobscura.com/VM or vmspod.com to find more information, along with our RSS feed. And follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod. Well, I recorded a pretty heartfelt introduction about some stuff that I'm going through and kind of debating the future of the podcast and all that. But when I went to play it back, it turned out there was this huge level of distortion, fuzz, and feedback that I wasn't picking up on my headphones. So I'm taking that as a sign. You're not going to get to listen to any of that. Instead, let's just get to this week's show. My guest this time is the cartoonist and artist Will McPhail, who has a fantastic debut graphic novel that's coming out today here in the U.S. Today equals June 8th, 2020. It's called In, I-N, and it's published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. In is about a guy who is anhedonic, we'll put it that way. That is, Nick's living life at a remove and can't really make a connection to the rest of the world. He bumbles through the motions of his life, and he can't have a real conversation that actually touches him. Everything is rote or somehow, not quite authentic, we'll put it that way. And then he does suddenly break through by accident. He just has a moment with someone and his life just opens up, and just as quickly it closes again, and he has to kind of figure out what happened and why and how to repeat the experience, and in the process manage what it means to be more real in the world. While at the same time, as we've all gone through, the world keeps spinning on its own, and parts of his life that he can't control kind of rear their ugly head and force him into other aspects of living and being connected to the people in the world around him. Now, vis-a-vis the introduction that got erased that you'll never hear, that's exactly why I make the podcast, is to have those connections and that real conversation, even when it's somebody I've never met and we're only talking into microphones and looking at computer screens instead of having an in-person moment. There are still those moments of authenticity, that moment of learning, not just feeling yourself real, but feeling the other person's reality. Anyway, I'm putting too much of that heaviness onto the book. What I need to say is that not only does Will tell a really poignant story of what it means to develop empathy, In is also hysterically funny. He's got a great sense of humor, and Will's marvelously kinetic cartooning style, it's just fantastic. He uses page layouts and color choices in ways that just perfectly sweep the reader along until the moments in which we have to stop and linger and take in what we're really seeing. He does a fantastic job of using the comic form to tell the story, which to me made In a compulsive joy to read. He, during our conversation, jokes about how little dialogue there really is in it. Now it's all this kinetic, frantic action, but there is a lot going on, both in what's said and what's seen, and the choices that the characters make. Now, I have loved Will's drawing style and individual gags for a bunch of years, so it's one thing to be a good gag cartoonist, but to be able to translate that into continuity like this and have a long-form narrative that can go and go, it's impressive as all get out. So I can't wait to see where Will goes from here. So go check out In, which is out now from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and also look for Will's cartoons in the New Yorker. I'll put a couple of examples of those on the webpage for this episode. Now here's Will's bio from In. Will McPhail has been contributing cartoons, sketchbooks, and humor pieces to The New Yorker since 2014. He was a winner of Reuben Awards for cartooning in 2017 and 2018. He lives in Edinburgh, Scotland. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Will McPhail. Given that In is a book about the importance of, making a real connection and having a real conversation, should I feel bad about writing down questions in advance?
Oh, absolutely not. If there's one thing that I've learned in talking about the book, it's that it's difficult to have those over faulty internet connections anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah, but no, definitely not. And one of the things I've written a book about how wonderful those connections are, which I guess we'll talk about more. But one thing that I do kind of want to stress to people is that I don't want people to feel pressured that they have to be deep and meaningful with me if they don't want to be,
Yeah.
I don't want everybody kind of leaning in going, but how are you really? Get real with me.
Let me tell you about my upbringing. That's I do always tell people this is a conversation, not an interview, but nobody ever takes that seriously and they just wait for questions. But I'll say last week I did record my first in-person show in about 14 months.
Oh, wonderful.
And normally when I do that, I take a picture of the guest afterwards and it's part of the web page for it, et cetera. And the guest said to me in advance, no, you don't take a picture of me. And with all of the other anxiety and everything else that went around sitting down with somebody in person without a mask for the first time in 14 months, I also had that sense of, I need to look at her face as much as I can, and just because this moment will be gone. This is, we're only going to have this. We'll have the voice and the conversation, but all of those little things will disappear afterwards. So I really found myself focusing even more intently than I would have, sitting down with someone.
You were almost forced to live in the moment a little bit more. That's really interesting.
Well, I told Chris Ware when I first pitched him about the show a few years ago. We ended up recording during a festival. He said, well, I live in Chicago. Can you do these remotely? And I said, actually, Chris, it's really a face-to-face thing where it's just two people looking at each other and not looking at screens for about an hour. And the smile just kept getting bigger and bigger on his face. Oh my God, you've captured, what I want out of life. But this
is one really tragic element of my life at the moment. But because I'm only ever sort of texting with friends or emailing people for the past year. I've started in the past couple of months, really, when I'm texting with somebody, really tried to imagine them sitting there with the phone and looking at the messages and how they're reacting, and even sort of what they're wearing in a non-creepy way. But, just really trying to visualize them there talking to me as opposed to just this robot inside my phone. You know what I mean? Just as a sort of a desperate grab for some sort of, connection.
Well, I've long said in my worst moments, I feel like I would fail a Turing test if I was really put to it. People would say, I'm not sure that's not just a bot and not Gil. And I realize that's not good. But tell me about In and how it came together for you as a book and in wanting to tell the story that you told.
Logistically, I was just sort of going about my life, drawing pigeons and stuff, and then a person who called Heather Carpus, who would go on to be my agent, emailed me just out of the blue. In fact, apparently she'd emailed me a year before and I hadn't responded, and then she just ignored. She decided
it's all about connection.
I don't know what I was doing, trying to open a closed pistachio at the time or whatever. And so she pretended that didn't happen, then emailed me again and said, "Have you ever thought about seeing your cartoons? Have you ever thought about doing a book?" And I lied and said, "Yeah, are you kidding me? I'm thinking about it all the time." And I sort of rushed out and bought 12 moleskins notepads, had a panic attack, and then wrote some, literally wrote book ideas at the top of a page, and just tried to find one or two real kind of truths that I felt really affected me, and that I felt I could build a world around. And one of them was this fascination that I've always had about how, like, the right sort of code of letters and words can change a conversation from being this performance into something that feels more genuine and authentic, and how that the difference, but the change between those two is jarring and vast, where the thing that was happening before is unrecognizable. And Heather pointed it and went, that one, right about that one. And then she essentially held my hand. I mean, to say she held my hand is a gross understatement. It was more like I was like asleep in a pram and with a blanket over me. She pushed me around through it and really walked me through the whole process of the proposal and sending it to publishers, and even like the structure of the thing, helped me with the actual book. And then it was, just sort of a blur of manic decisions, and eventually a book came out.
Yeah, what did you learn about storytelling in the process of it, and how different was that from essentially gags, single panel cartoons? I know you've done a multi-page work, but generally, you're best known for the single panel gag.
Yeah, nothing anywhere near as long as this. No, it was. At first, it was very. I thought this is the most freeing thing ever. I did not just in terms of, like you say, focusing on an arc and having to be conscientious about the storyline, but just the space on the page is more than I've ever had. With the New Yorker stuff, you kind of got to squeeze a premise and a setup and a punchline and a whole snapshot of a world into one panel, and with the shortest caption you can think of, and it's all there in one panel. Whereas when I started on the graphic novel, I had all this space and this time to tell jokes, or time to be not funny if I wanted to, and I could take things slowly and build things up steadily, and so that felt really freeing. And then when I went back to the New Yorker cartoons, I thought, oh no, this is freeing. I get to write about pigeons and pistachio nuts. This feels like the more freeing thing, and not have to care about how that will affect the story later on. And so I kind of the two things have become just two things that I love equally, but just feel like a different muscle or a change of gear. And one kind of relieves me from the other when I'm getting slightly sort of bored of either one.
And do you feel you have the bug? You have ideas for more books down the line?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think I will do. It's definitely that thing where I've forgotten the stress of what it was like when I was finishing it, which was intense. But now I'm ready. Yeah, in the short term, I've got to do when I signed the thing to do the graphic novel, it was a 2-book deal, so I had to. I have to do a cartoon collection after this, which is just a lot of all the stuff that I've already done, but encapsulated nicely in a book. But I'm definitely going to do a graphic novel after. I've had sort of a soup of ideas that I haven't developed enough to speak about in a smart way.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of the lessons I've developed with the podcast over the years. Don't tell anyone about the next book. The collection's one thing, but don't try and, what I'm working on is X, Y, and Z. You'll kill it for yourself. And
for sure.
Anybody who happens to listen to this and is a fan of yours will be wondering, where the hell is that book he was talking about back in 2021? For years.
The lost project that everybody cares about. Yeah. Also, if I'd have told people about what In was like in the very early stages, they would have received a completely different book by the end.
Yeah, how did it change for you?
Oh, a lot. It was initially I was sort of leaning towards it being just a straight novel with just a couple of illustrations in it, maybe, and gradually, again with the help of Heather, gradually it just kind of because I've never done anything like it before. The whole thing was me learning every second, and I was basically revealing to myself that I'm just so much more comfortable expressing these complex ideas visually than I am with words, and so it just felt, I just, at every stage of working on it, I tried to do what felt the most natural, and so yeah, that was one big way that it changed. It became a lot more visual. I mean, if when people read it, they'll realize that there's like 4 lines of dialogue in the whole thing. It's mostly like sort of brooding glances and big pictures.
Except with very large eyes. So
Yes.
that's
Okay.
not keen level, but still, the big eye trademark for you. That's good.
Yeah. 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 The big eyes are weird. They've sort of evolved over time. The big eyes, and got bigger and bigger. So maybe they will get to that level. I don't know.
And you'll be on trial like Keen and his wife, and we'll see who can really.
Exactly.
Now, Kirkus Review described the book as gorgeous navel gazing. I was going with anhedonia with style, but do you have a elevator pitch or 5-word description for people who are on the fence about picking up the book?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's not 5 words, but I've often found myself in these conversations where I'm saying things that I don't care about or even mean, just to get through the conversation unscathed and to join in with what's happening. And when I can tell that the person that I'm talking to is doing that as well, it makes me think, who are we doing this for? The book is about what happens when 2 people like stop performing for each other and just say the things that matter to them.
I'll tell you a secret, which I may have revealed on the show before, but it's a weird one. Somebody called a few days after my birthday earlier this year to wish me a happy birthday. And in the moment they were introducing themselves or saying who they were, I was putting in my AirPods, so I missed it.
Right.
And I didn't recognize the number, didn't recognize the person's voice, and was too embarrassed to ask who it was because he talked for another 2 minutes after I put the AirPods in. I literally kept the conversation going for half an hour without actually knowing who I was talking to, even though it was somebody I was friends with, who I knew was in Toronto. I'm just like, I'll keep things as innocuous as I can. I'm typing away on the computer, trying to figure out, wait, this number doesn't match there. That's not this. By about the 28-minute mark, I finally found the phone number in my email, realized who it was, mention the person's name so that I could not let on that I didn't know who I was talking to for half an hour straight. But that's a facet of our lives.
Exactly. For you to take that what seems like a small leap of saying, I don't know who you are, and saying the thing that you really mean, feels so difficult, doesn't it? And that's kind of what the book is about, like taking that leap into saying that. And which isn't to say that I've worked out how to do it. I have those things all the time. I'm constantly, when somebody is introducing, like extending their hand to shake mine, I'm going, and they're saying their name. In my head, I'm going through how I'm going to say my name to them and not listening to what they're doing. Or like just this morning, I got a coffee and took it to the car and was getting my keys out of my coat and put the coffee on top of my car. And a guy walked past and said, "Oh, don't drive off with the coffee on the roof there." And I went, "Oh, I almost did there." No, I didn't. I knew it was there the whole time, but I just wanted to join in with this thing that was happening between us. Yeah. And then I said that'd be 10 quid down the drain these days. So I was making a comment about coffee prices through the years, which I have no idea about, but I just wanted to, I don't know, take part in this dance that we were doing.
Now, how much of that do you think is general social convention, and how much is the insularity of being an artist that makes it even tougher for you to get the reps of being around human beings?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I don't know the answer. I have always, this artistic nature of kind of being on the outside, looking in, is the double-edged sword that we all have, where it's fueled our work for our whole lives and provided us with a livelihood, but it also cuts you out of stuff. So I would guess it's mostly that, but I don't know if those things are relating to, if other people can relate to those things, then I guess it is a universal thing, and we all we all find it in our own ways, and it's not just that I'm a tortured artist.
Well, there's tortured, and then there's just afraid of human contact artists. It's why
Yeah.
when I ask most artists and cartoonists how they've dealt with the pandemic, they're basically saying, not really much of a change.
Right.
This is how I was living already. So
yeah, it's the same with me. Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah. In that light, I read that you'd finished the book in the first couple of months of, as I call it, this whole situation.
Yeah.
With a capital T, W, and S. How did that affect the book, both the portions you were working on and sort of, looking back on what you'd already done? With the pandemic and the way we all turned to Zoom and everything else, did it inform, parts of it that you were going back to, or is it a, holy crap, I need to just plow forwards and finish this, and not look at the world we're in?
Yeah, well, yeah, I did finish it. I wrote the whole thing and pitched it all before or at least wrote the plot before the pandemic ever happened, and it was in the sort of deepest part of the lockdown when I was finishing all the real meat of it, all the colouring and all the drawings and all the little bits of dialogue. And yeah, it would be a lie to say that it hadn't affected it, or how I related to because there's obvious themes of isolation in there, and we were suddenly all isolated. So it would be a lie to say it hadn't affected it. But I'm honestly a little bit reluctant to tie the two together. I'm not reluctant to talk about it, but just to sort of tie the two together in a sort of a promotional way, just because it feels a little bit exploitative, like just kind of
no.
You know that thing that killed all your loved ones. Yeah, well, I wrote a book during it, and it's you can pre-order it now. You know what I mean? But I think it was more the case that, like you said, the people, artist worlds didn't change, and despite sort of having everybody else and my friends, and because I couldn't see my friends or my family or anything like that, we all kind of felt a little bit directionless and a little bit of kind of without a north to point to. And whereas I had this obvious goal, I had to finish this book, I had this thing that I could point towards and work on. And so in that respect, I think the book kind of helped me deal with the pandemic, as opposed to the other way around, if you know what I mean, as opposed to it helping me write about isolation or anything like that. Yeah, I think it helped me rather than the other way around.
No, I appreciate that. A couple of guests I've had who did have projects that, extended into those first months, they can't speak highly enough of having an organized deadline project to help you get through a global pandemic.
Exactly.
Basically,
yeah.
For the rest of us not having structure, I had a few episodes backed up. I started just doing daily shows with past guests, just like half an hour here and there, asking them, how they were getting along. And I have a day job I have a day job where I represent companies that make drugs and vaccines for drug companies. So I was busy. We'll put it that way. Okay. But at the same time, a lobbyist, it's a weird thing, but whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just especially in those early months, for a lot of us, there wasn't a thing to do. There's nowhere to go. The commute is gone. You discover all these different hours that you didn't have and that everybody now has. And it's having a project like that, I'm sure would have been beneficial for a lot of us, but instead we had to make it up as we went along. But.
Yeah, it definitely helped me feel a little bit less lonely throughout the whole thing.
To that end, what was it like when you were done?
The stress towards the end was so intense that it didn't feel like I was lost, but it felt celebratory more than anything. But I dove straight back into the New Yorker cartoon, so I wasn't ever sort of twiddling my thumbs.
But still, having a big project,
yeah,
something you'd been working on for a while, complete. Some artists have a letdown phase, I guess. Did you experience something like that?
I didn't. I was happy with how it turned out, and I was it was weird because I think because I knew the story and how it ended for so long, and how it was going to go and what was going to happen. The final periods of it were just sort of colouring in, essentially. And so I was sort of preparing myself for other things before it had ended, if you knew what I mean. I was already sort of thinking about next projects and stuff. The New York cartoons got more difficult because I just wasn't experiencing anything to draw inspiration from.
Well, I was going to say you may have dodged a bullet there, because some of the New Yorker cartoonists like Emily Flake and a few others who I talked to during that stretch.
My hero, by the way.
Oh, God, she's so wonderful.
She's the best.
Yeah, she's got this residency going on now for women humorists. She's putting together.
St. Nell's.
St. Nell's, yeah. But she and a few other ones said the challenge in those first few months was not making gags about like toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and other standard cliches of the pandemic. So you may have dodged a bullet by having Ian take you through that phase and a little beyond. But how tough was it getting back to not just the single panel milieu, but like you said, having ideas, coming up with something funny?
Well, as people who've seen my cartoons will testify, they're not always funny. So in that respect, it wasn't difficult as long as I'm doing something. No, like I said, it felt like a kind of welcome gear change, actually, switching back to just the fun cartoons, and I could write about sex and stuff again. My technique throughout that was to just completely ignore any kind of pandemic stuff and kind of give people just a fantasy world where they're looking into where the cartoon that they're looking at is a world where this isn't happening. But no, they got weirder just because I wasn't going out speaking to my friends and experiencing life. So they just kind of spiraled into these more abstract and absurd cartoons as I was submitting, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They're some of my favorite ever cartoons, the more absurd ones. But yeah, I'm still a guy sort of sat in my comfortably reclining chair drawing cartoons. It's never that hard.
Yeah. It's last week when I went in to do that in-person show. It's my second trip into New York, but really first one by myself since all this began. Yeah. And I was hanging out in Central Park near the writer's home, and it was just people walking around, some of whom were saying the dumbest shit. And I thought, I've been in isolation for 14. I live out in the woods about 25 miles from New York. And so I was like, I haven't heard people just gabbing for over a year, and it hasn't changed. They're still talking about the same dumb shit, and I'm sure that's the stuff you'd find material out of. But
I know. Do you think we will get over it quicker than we all expect? Like
Yeah, I think in urban situations, especially, people are just way eager to just get back to, I don't want to say normalcy or banality, but to just have those moments again. Yeah, again, just having in-person conversations without a mask. It's a weird trip. And again, different people have had different levels of risk aversion, et cetera. But it's just strange.
I'm worried that I won't have anything to talk to. I've been sort of looking forward to seeing everybody for so long that we'll all sit down and go, well, what have you been up to? And it's like, nothing.
Well, that's a secret thing. I did meet up with a pal after that podcast, and he talked about his personal life because he had some up and down issues throughout it. And I realized after, I'm like, I didn't really say anything. And I don't know if I have anything to talk about. I mean, I have day job stuff that's all non-disclosure-y to begin with. And I was like, I'm not sure, getting back to meeting everybody, I'm really going to seem like the most interesting person. But
I know I'm not going to be the life of the party like I was before. And there's only so much I can talk about my own book towards people. That gets boring pretty quickly.
Let me tell you about inking this page. It was, that's nothing anybody needs to.
I know. I'm just doing readings for my friends now at dinners. let me take you to chapter 3. We open on a rain-soaked street.
Well, let me ask, actually, in the writing, as I think we mentioned before we started, you have we'll say kinetic style. You capture motion and the moment before motion just beautifully.
Oh,
was there a sense of Well, I don't want to say, are you thinking of scripting things? Have you looked at, writing for film or animation, or, does your work sort of translate in that form? Is it something you've explored at this point?
Not properly. I don't know if it translates. There's been again, I'm not going to sort of, like you said, tell people about the second project that will never happen. But, I think there has been some interest about the adaptations of books, as there always is. I definitely didn't write the book in that way, mostly just because. Out of a respect thing, the more than anything else, this is my first time dipping my toe into the graphic novel world, and this is a world that people really, really value on its own merits. And I didn't want to write something that was a movie idea that I've crowbarred into a graphic novel, because I can make a graphic novel in my room alone, and I can't make a movie on my own. I wanted
Sure.
it to. I wanted the medium to be the medium that it was that it is. The in is supposed to be a graphic novel. That's how it's supposed to be told. Until somebody gives me loads of money.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's when people just look, oh, it's just like a storyboard for a movie. You're like, not if they're doing it right.
Yeah.
Comics are inherently comics. Where did
Yes.
comics start for you? Where did drawing your own cartoons, but also reading comics? Where did that all begin?
I grew up in England, obviously. So
I couldn't tell.
oh, this is a really good accent. My earliest memories were things like, I don't know if you know about the Dandy and the Beano and things like that. But
yeah, my mom's British, so we would get whenever we went over when I was a kid, we would get comics. So yeah.
It was. I remember vague sort of snapshots of that over my brother's shoulder. He was reading them. But the first thing, Calvin and Hobbes was my entire childhood. That's the only thing that I read. I know it word for word. As soon as I saw it, I was obsessed with it, and then ripped it off for the next 10 years in my drawings. I mean, yeah,
the worst influences you could have.
Oh, totally. But you talked about my big eyes. They started out as Calvin's eyes, little round dots. But so yeah, it was Bill Watterson forever, and then as I sort of grew up and went into turns into a teenager and stuff, I think I kind of lost it. I lost cartoons or graphic novels, or that in terms of consuming them. I didn't read comic books or superhero things or anything as I was growing up. I was still drawing all the time, but for some reason I didn't advance from. Well, I don't think you can advance from Calvin Hobbes, but I didn't move on from it, and I didn't really consume anything else until much later, when I then started to find the New Yorker cartoonists and a bit more adult stuff. So it was weird. There was a kind of a big gap in the middle, really, where I didn't have any influence, but kept drawing on my own. Yeah.
Yeah. What did the New Yorker mean to you? Is it something that was around at all when you were young? Or again, is it something you just discovered later?
It was later. It was around sort of end of high school, college, which is the 2 years before we go to university. But from the moment I saw it, it was the Everest. That just like, the top of the mountain. I like I was with Calvin Hobbes, I became obsessed with the New Yorker, and that's the only place that I wanted to be, and that I was going to just dedicate my life to. And it still is. The first time I got a cartoon in there, it comes out later in England, so I was sort of waiting for that issue to come out, and ran off and bought it. And I was on the train back from Manchester to wherever I live, the Shire, and there was a guy on the train with the issue in front of me, sat in front of me with the New Yorker, and I missed 2 stops waiting for him to get to my cartoon in the page, and he got to it, and he looked at it, I saw him look down, and he just went, a little exhale out of the nose, and then turned the page. nothing else. I thought, okay, it doesn't mean quite as much to everybody else,
Yeah, but
but it was a
still, you
big.
got something. Yeah.
I got something. Yeah, exactly. And it was an
Now,
authentic response too.
yeah. Oh, again, when I saw God dunking or about to dunk through the angel's halo, I literally busted out a laugh. It's always
Oh
nice when
wow.
there's a gag that you will straight up laugh over. Again, with the LOL world that we live in.
Yeah.
But how long between when you first started pitching and when you made your first sale to the New Yorker?
I'd heard these stories about Bruce Eric Kaplan submitting for years and not get, and it wasn't that bad. I think it was. I think it was 3 or 4 months, something like that. It wasn't. It wasn't terrible. It was. I was just sending them by post, not knowing if they were getting there from England, and eventually, kind of cover letters getting more and more desperate with each submission, and eventually Colin Stokes, who was then the assistant cartoon editor, took pity on me and wrote back, and then gave me an email address that I could send to, and a couple of tips. And it wasn't soon after that I sold my first one, I think. So I was really lucky, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I had the story. I did one with Ed Koren, who first published in the 50s or early 60s, and he sold his first submission.
Yeah.
And didn't sell for another 18 months after that.
Oh, no.
Because his thing was, well, this is easy. I submitted something, I got in, and boom.
Oh, man, that's painful. That's really treat them mean, keep them keen.
Yeah, it's those things where you there's no baseline, I guess, or no handbook that tells you this is how long you need to wait. This is what's going to happen next, and
No.
And again, so much of it is we'll say random. But have you ever done Look Day in person, or have you always been submitting remotely?
No, I did a couple of that. I've made a pilgrimage to New York to do it, especially, and of course, when I got there, pretended that I was in New York for other reasons and that I had an exciting life, but I was really there to hand 10 cartoons to Bob Mankoff for him to reject. So yeah, and then I've spent a lot of time in New York since, or I did before the situation, as you called it.
Yes.
And so yeah, I mostly I can't bear to do the handing over the cartoons and them casting them aside, so I'll just email them in. But I'll go into the office occasionally just to say hello to people and hope that George Booth's there or Leanna Fink's there or whatever, and I can stare at them.
Yeah, I had wondered how uncomfortable it is. There's that little documentary about essentially about Mankoff and about Look Day, where to me, as someone who doesn't practice this form, it seems like one of the most uncomfortable things in the world. But again, for cartoonists, everything is uncomfortable. So I figure you probably get somewhat used to it over time.
It was the first time I went in. It was really nice because I think I was. I think when I first got in, there was I was maybe part of a wave of a few kind of youngish people, and so there was a few guys that were my age, and I could talk to, and everyone was really friendly. And I've got a novel British accent, so that always helps.
Yeah. Did you have you mentioned George Booth and Liana and of course Emily, idols that either that you were emulating or that you freaked the hell out at when you actually got to meet them in person?
Emily Flake. I don't know if Emily Flake will say that I freaked out, but internally I was when I met her there. I think I met her at a meeting once, and just was like embarrassingly fawning over her. Outside of Bill Watterson, most of my New Yorker, because like I said, there was that weird sort of gap. Most of my heroes and idols were the people that were in the magazine while I was trying to get in, and they were kind of my generation of cartoonists. So like Emily Flake and Leanna Fink and Zach Kanin and Ed Steed, and so they were the guys that I really looked up to, and it took me I'm now lucky enough that some of those people are my friends. And it took me I actually sort of almost had to do my retroactive research to find people like, Peter Arno and the and George Booth and all, the generations that kind of built the platform before me. But yeah, most of the people that were scared, most scared to meet are the kind of my contemporaries, I guess.
Because you wonder what they've been saying about you behind your back? Or I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he's this British guy weaseling in on all our action.
Let's call the New Yorker, not the New England. Yeah,
exactly.
But when did you feel like you'd developed what we'll call your style, and then we'll try and define what your style is. But when did you feel you sort of understood what you were doing as a cartoonist?
Oh, I have not done that.
That's the backup question to it all. Do you ever feel like you've achieved, that?
No, definitely not. No, it still very much feels like I'm flying by the seat of my pants the whole time. I don't know if you would. I guess that's for other people to say if I've sort of developed a voice or anything like that. I will say that early on, trying to get in, I was definitely trying to do the New Yorker more than I was trying to make myself laugh. And as time has gone on, almost just as a sort of coping mechanism, I've tried more to just do stuff that makes me laugh. And if the New Yorker like it, then that's the best seal of approval I could ever get. So yeah, I guess, in terms of the writing, I've tried to be myself a bit more. Not in terms of putting my personal life in there or things like that, but just to make myself laugh. Yeah. And in terms of the drawing, I think you would definitely see a change. I think I've just become more expressive, like particularly in the eyes, like we mentioned. They've got bigger and rounder because I can find more ways to manipulate eyebrows and eyelids to get the exact panicked expression that I want my characters to have.
That being the dominant mode, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My favorite face is just this sort of panicked horror. I think it's the funniest thing.
And you use it to great effect throughout so, I was glad. Again, because I'd seen your stuff in, again, single frames all this time and seeing the continuity and seeing, I guess that's a question. When you're working in long form, it just keeping the characters visually who they are. How much of a challenge was that for you compared to, I don't have to draw this person again. I've just put this person in this scenario in a New Yorker gag.
Yeah, to make people recognizable. It was weird. I almost did a kind of a little period of almost rehearsals. It's weird. It felt like I was rehearsing to write my own book, but in drawing form. So I would really get used to drawing Ren over and over again and the exact ways that her position of where her ears were and her nose was and stuff like that, just so it felt like I could do it naturally every time from any angle. Which seems like a lot of work, but it was only kind of 3 characters, and once I've mastered that and made them vaguely recognizable, then I cracked it. It's definitely interesting because like you say, I do in the single panel ones, I can just sort of make one person throw them away and never think about them again.
Yeah. Years ago, I never got to record with him, or haven't yet. There's a cartoonist named David Boswell who did this amazing comic in the 80s and 90s called Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman, which, is tremendous. And, as good as that title sounds. And he'd said, if I knew I was going to draw that character for 20 years, I'd have given him a different nose. That was his big thing, this box-like nose he had. You don't know how tough it is, he said, drawing that at every angle. I really would have just done something different had I known. So,
yeah. It's weird. You kind of get trapped by your own decisions sometimes, eh?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I took up drawing just a couple of months ago, so I'm kind of puzzling things out. But just
how are you getting on?
Oh, I just draw trees. I live in essentially the woods. So just in February or March, I just started drawing trees, and they've just between us, because no one's listening. I put them all in a Flickr set recently. I could just take a picture of each page when I finish it. And the progress looks like someone who had a traumatic brain injury getting better. It's one of those things. I'm like, oh my God, that's what, because they look almost real now. And they look like somebody who just had a stroke back in February. This is great. So.
He's getting better. He's getting his hands right. Well, I mean, if you're talking about Bill Watterson, the unsung hero in his cartoons are his trees. They're wonderful.
Oh God, yeah.
I guess he's got a New England, is he? That kind of area, Maine or something like that?
I think I forget. I thought he was Midwest, but I may be but I may be totally wrong. I now that I think about it, I thought he's in Ohio or somewhere.
I've just enforced that on him because of, the kind of fall trees and things like that. I kind of naturally thought about up there. But yeah, I draw trees all the time. That's the best, because it's just 1,000 little decisions, aren't they, as you're sort of moving your way up.
Yeah. Oh, it killed me once spring hit. I was doing great when they were just branches, limbs, and trunks. And then I'm like, God damn it. Now I got to figure out leaves and color and holy shit.
And 1,000 of them too. Not just one time.
Well, that was Daryl Cunningham a few weeks ago when we talked about this. He said, Gil, my one piece of advice, you don't have to draw all the leaves individually. I'm like, yeah, I'm figuring that out. That's starting to occur to me as my arm is cramping and my neck is going.
Yeah, you've got to take a kind of cloud approach. What are you drawing with? What's your medium? What's your deal?
Literally just these Strathmore 400 sketch pads, 4B pencil. Then I got a set of colored pencils and some pastel crayon, basically pastels. And I've had to start using those as the leaves have come in. I'll send you a link to this thing so you can laugh. But I just decided I was watching this series on HBO called Painting with John. This artist, musician, etc.
People keep telling me to watch this thing.
It's really good. It's only 6 episodes. It's weird. It's not Bob Ross. It's not an instructional thing. But
when people told me to watch it, that's the exact question I had. Is it Bob Ross?
No. He actually tells you don't start drawing. Don't do this. You won't make anything good. You're too old and you haven't kept up. And on the strength of that, I thought, yeah, I should do the exact opposite. And I'm going to go in the backyard and try and draw some of the trees. And since then, it's become this. Once I moved to doing it daily, it became you can get better and you can learn to see. And I'm 50, so this is part of the. Gil does something with the realization that he never has to get professionally good at it.
Right.
It's just
the pressure's off. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 50 years old. No one's going to say, oh my God, we need to do an exhibition of this. It's just, oh, that's very nice. You're learning a different skill. You're learning to see stuff differently. I look at I've been a comics reader since I was a child, and I look at everything differently now in the last 2 or 3 months, just in terms of the line and everything else. And I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing now. It's not ruining my enjoyment of it, but like,
yes, I
I'm
totally
gaining so
agree.
much more.
The demystifying of talented people doesn't ruin the magic for me at all. In fact, it makes me appreciate it even more.
Yeah. It's been useful for me, and I've yet to turn it into a resentment of holy shit, I got to go draw something. It's just I look out my window. There's enough things here. I will figure out something, or I'll see something when I'm out for a walk and stop and draw. And it's just been strange. I have to figure out how to do stuff beyond trees, like the ground. But, eventually I'll start, we joke, branching out. That's all
you want to do is just turn the pencil sideways and then keep going, draw a line. Do you find it? I think we're going to just redefine what meditation is eventually, and it's going to be anything that you are completely focused on without thinking about anything else.
Exactly what I was going to say. And I was going to ask you, given that you do this professionally, for me, it's not exactly a Zen thing. I'm very aware that I'm doing drawing, that I'm drawing something that I'm looking, et cetera. But I don't think about the generic drug negotiations I'm doing with FDA or having to get my oil changed. Literally, I think of nothing else but that I'm doing this. And how am I going to do that
where
branch?
That line is going. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And honestly, that's what meditation is for me. Just your mind being taken up by one thing at a time.
Yeah. And I'm thankful to have discovered this, but I also wonder with people like you who have to do this, for whom it's a profession, like, do you get that moment when you're drawing that it is just the drawing and nothing else?
I really do. It's a particularly with the New Yorker cartoons, it isn't
Yeah.
kind of as simple as it being one whole. It's kind of broken up into two parts for me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure this isn't the way for everybody, but sort of the majority of the week I'll be wandering around and ideas will be percolating in my brain and sort of swishing around, and I'll note some stuff down and vague ideas, and then at the end of the week, there's sort of 2 or 3 days at the end of the week, I'll draw out those cartoons, and that the drawing of the cartoons is almost this sort of meditative treat for me at the end of the period of thinking about the ideas. And so it's almost two separate parts. And that second part does feel like meditation because I'm just focusing on expressing this idea that I'd had earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the coming up with the ideas, like you said, the fear of it turning into a job that you have to do well to survive. The way that I've coped with it is to kind of resist working out how to come up with the ideas. Like, even when I've sort of thought about, oh, that's a good route, I'll be able to use that again, I've shut it down immediately because I want it to stay a mystery how the ideas arrive, so that every time it happens, it's fun and exhilarating. Which is risky because maybe some weeks it doesn't happen. You have a shit batch to send in, but it at least keeps it from feeling like a job for me, and it keeps it feeling fun and exciting every time.
Yeah, in that respect, what have you gotten better at over the years?
Um,
Whether it's the writing or the drawing or however you
I think
consider advancement.
Yeah, definitely the writing, I would say. I think I've definitely improved in that. When I was first getting into the cartoons, every editor would say to me, Bob Mankoff included, beautiful drawings, the jokes need work, and in the way that Bob Mankoff does.
Did he have his Google glasses on when he said that? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, he tapped the side of his glasses and he just saw me in Matrix style code. And he said, good at drawing, shit at writing.
Right.
So I would say that the writing's got better. Yeah. With the thing that he did actually say to me was, for some reason, when I first started submitting to him, say it's a very simple cartoon with two people sat at a table and there's a caption. Both of the characters would have their mouths closed and then a caption underneath. And he would say, why are the mouths closed? One of them's saying, I can't tell who's saying this. And I said, I kind of like to imagine it that they've just said it and then stopped talking. And he like paused and said, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Open their mouths. So I was like, okay, good advice.
That's those mechanics and things like that there's so many little mechanisms, I guess, that go into making a gag. That's
it's distractions. That's the thing. You need to. It took me a long time to learn that even very good quality background drawing can be a distraction and can ruin the joke because people aren't focused on it and they're focused on something else in the picture.
Yeah, unless like your great one with the FaceTime call where everything else in the room is an absolute disaster. All those great details you have packed in. Yeah. That's the joke itself. But yeah,
exactly, that is the joke. Yeah.
Now, the question I like to ask New Yorker cartoonists who have transitioned from Bob to Emma Allen, have you resubmitted things that Bob didn't find funny in hopes that Emma would find them funny?
I don't think I have, but that's not a bad idea.
I'm just saying.
I might do that. I rarely resubmit, actually. Very rarely. I've got such reverence for the New Yorker's opinion that I think if they think it's bad, then it's bad, and if they think it's good, then it's good. But yeah, I don't know if I changed at all from the transition of Bob to Emma. I feel like I can maybe I feel like just I can be a bit more absurd with it. I feel like that's Emma's. Emma, both of them are obviously trying to look after the New Yorker's voice itself, as opposed to just impose their own sense of humor. But I feel like Emma is a bit more responsive to more absurd things as opposed to just observational. So I feel like if that was in me, I've been more willing to do it, which is awesome. But yeah, I don't think. Yeah, like I said, I try to just put in what makes me laugh, really, and if they like it, then brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. I give her credit for a lot of things, but Emma's willingness to go with cartoonists who will just say, don't look like New Yorker art styles, I
Right.
guess. Like I
Yeah.
see Carl Stevens and E.S. Glenn and other people. I'm like, yeah, those are younger comics. They look different than, Roz Chast, who I absolutely love and adore and
Yeah.
have recorded with a few times, as well as, again, you mentioned the Arnos and the Booths and the various, like Ed Koren and people along his line, that it's a very different style, or a number of different styles she's, helped bring in and show off in the magazine.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like there's a lot more discernible voices, which I think is a really good thing. I love that.
Yeah. Now,
And I'm sure the cartoonists love that because that is the dream to have to have a recognizable style. That's kind of all we want, that people will when you see a Zach Cannon cartoon or a Leon Fink cartoon, it's them. It couldn't be anybody else. That's
right.
like the dream, I think.
Yeah. Have you had that moment of people saying, well, do you get that sense of recognition? I don't know how much New Yorker cartoonists, as opposed to graphic novelists, get out for like festivals and public appearances and stuff. But have you had people, oh my God, you're Will McPhail at you or not?
Oh no, that was I don't think. Yeah, a couple of times people noticed me, mostly in New York, mostly in the New Yorker office.
When they're asking you to leave? I'm sorry, you Will McPhail, you're not allowed here. You have to get out of the
Are
office.
you Will McPhail? Yes, I am. Do you want an autograph? No, you have to leave.
Yeah.
No, rarely. I think I don't. I'm definitely not famous. And if I am, I think it's my cartoons that are, as opposed to me. But yeah, a couple of people notice me, but they just say nice things. It's
Yeah.
it's fine.
You'll have to hope the pandemic continues so you won't have to worry about book tours and making
Exactly.
appearances and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
Heaven forbid people asking me to draw 1,000 pigeons in the front of their books.
well, that's my biggest question. You came into, well, you really developed as a cartoonist while you were getting a degree in zoology, or so I read.
Yeah.
Favorite non-parrot, non-pigeon animal to draw?
Oh. I don't know. You've taken away my two greatest weapons.
No, those are what does he draw the most? Because if I just said, what's your favorite animal, you would have knocked that out in a heartbeat. But I figure if we take away those two and you're stuck.
When or rats too, I do a lot of rats. Genuinely vermin is my wheelhouse. No, but my favorite, when I did zoology, my obsession was with mustelids, which is a group of animals that include otters, weasels, stoats, those kind of things. I love those. They're so.
I would say fluid. There's a fluidity to them which just lends right to your line. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the word I was looking for. If you'd have seen my hands moving, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, they're so fluid. So yeah, I love those. They're my favorite.
And not to ask too much about a second book, but a funny animal or anthropomorphics project for you? Never mind. You don't have to ask. We certainly don't need to see the Will version of Mouse. Don't worry. I'm not asking that either. So.
Oh no. Yeah. There's pigeon instead.
Yeah. I don't know what metaphor you'd come up with in an Art Spiegelman kind of way, but
I did a thing for the New Yorker that was a sketchbook, I think is what they call it. It was a full page thing that was called NYC's Most Eligible Pigeons, and it was like most eligible bachelors, but they were all pigeons with various horrible personality traits. So maybe I'll expand that into a kind of reality, got a dating show or something.
And post-pandemic, is New York the place you really want to get to when you're allowed to travel safely again?
Yes, absolutely. It's the first place I'm going to. I'm having daily fantasies about being on an aeroplane to New York. I'm like thinking about what's the most comfortable trousers that I could wear, and just like to have my shoes in a plastic box and to have my contact lens solution confiscated because people think it's an explosive are things that I'm fantasizing about now.
Yeah, my day job, I did a lot of travel, trade shows, visiting member companies, et cetera. And, it's been weird. It's one of those things. I'm like, I was taking the train down to Washington for lobbying sessions and meeting FDA and stuff. And I'm like, I haven't done anything like that. And I haven't had a haircut in a very long time. So yeah, the whole pants thing is going to be an interesting question for all of us.
Exactly. I got a haircut yesterday, actually, for the first time.
I'll send you a picture of before pandemic and this current mode, because it's literally 16 months. And I have just, if I comb it out, the biggest afro a white man can bear. It's
I love it, man. Go for it.
Yeah, I seriously, like, if I brush it out before, taking care of it, it'll look like the Jimi Hendrix Experience cover from the late 60s with the giant poofs on the rhythm section. And at 50, if I can grow it like that, I'm perfectly happy. So,
totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just tie it all back when I have to be on Zoom with like Senate staff and all that. I as long as I don't move my head, they can't tell that, it's all jury rigged in the back by a bunch of ponytails and stuff. But
Or maybe they'll just think your hair is like the background green screen that you're choosing, and it's just because it fills the screen.
Nice. Yeah, I could do that. Man, that's an idea. I'll do it for the next FDA session, see how much they freak out. Or it'll create a static shock that knocks out the camera. It's one or the other. But like we were saying before we started, there's things you can complain about and not complain about when it comes to a global pandemic.
Yes.
But it does bring me to the last question. Your office chair, what's gone wrong with the chair, and how are you going to resolve it?
How we'll resolve it is up in the air, but I think it's leaning towards violence. I think that's how it's going to end, because by the passive aggressive kind of tone of the response email about how clear my video was, I think it's not going to end well. But I don't know.
I was initially freaked out because you were complaining to something called John Lewis, which here in the U.S. is the name of the great civil rights congressman who napalmed, and I was like, what is he why would John Lewis come up? It's just an office chair. And then realized that yes, I in fact was bringing my own cultural connotations to this angry video you were putting together.
I thought about that afterwards. I thought this is not going to play well with the with the American audience. Is
this an anti-voting rights thing he's doing? I don't
I'm all about voter suppression, and I like to do it through my office furniture. No, John Lewis is like this middle of the road. Well, to me, luxury. But Boris Johnson just was leaked saying that it was almost like beneath him, John Lewis. But to me, it's like very posh, lovely shop, which is part of why I'm so furious that the recline doesn't work, because I spent loads of money on this chair and it's the most expensive thing I've ever bought, and it's not right. And now I'm angry again, and now I need to zoom out and see what's happening in the world.
I'm telling you, you'll have to go make another angry video. It'll become the thing you're known for, along with a fantastic graphic novel. So,
thank you very much.
Which at least I enjoyed the heck out of. And once it's available, well, when the podcast comes out, it'll be out for people to get, but I will be foisting off copies on friends of mine too. So
I hope you can get your hands on an actual book, because it really does. I would say that it really does need to be read in its intended form. I'm
your publicist is sending it.
They are brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm terrified about people reading it on Kindles and stuff. Because
God. Yeah.
And when you see what a good job they did with the actual book, it's a lovely object to have as well. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's one of those things that really early in the pandemic, nobody could go into offices or warehouses, so everybody was sending review copies digitally, books and comics. And it was just, I'm like, I've got that like 13-inch iPad, so I can, get the idea of it. But, that also weighs on you after a while, physically trying to read from that again. So, there have been trade-offs during this whole thing. But like we said at the beginning, if our biggest complaints are about e-review copies and office chairs, we're getting by pretty well with this whole pandemic thing, Will.
I'm okay. We got by. Yeah, you're right.
I think we're doing fine. But Will, thanks so much for coming on. And, next time you're here, I hope I can, also sneak into the New Yorker offices or otherwise, get to meet you in person.
Oh, I would love that. Thanks for having me on, Gil. It's been really, really a pleasure.
And that was Will McPhail. His new book is In, from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. It is a fantastic graphic novel. And I should have mentioned, the physical book itself is gorgeous. I had to read it in a review copy and PDF when I first got it. But when the real edition showed up a couple of weeks ago, I was just floored by how good a production it is. It's a really impressive book. So go get In and go check out Will's site, willmcphail.com, where you can find links to his work at the New Yorker and Private Eye and elsewhere. He's on Twitter at Will McPhail and Instagram at Will McPhail4, which is the number 4. It's spelled WILLMCPHAIL, and there'll be links to all this in the show and episode notes for this one. Now, you can support the Virtual Memories Show by telling other people about it. Just go on social media or email your pals or text them or whatever, and just tell them about this neat podcast. And it also helps me if you drop me a line and just let me know what you like and don't like about the show, who you'd like to hear me record with, what movie or TV show or book or comic or piece of music you think I should turn listeners on to. And you can do that by email or postcard or letter or my Google Voice number, which I don't get incoming calls directly. I just get told there are messages there, so you don't have to worry about calling and having me pick up and getting stuck in a conversation with a boring person like me. That number is 973-869-9659. Messages are limited to 3 minutes, so if you're going to go over that, call a second time and keep going. Now, if you've got money to spare, don't give it to me. My day job treats me just fine. My finances are okay. My podcast expenses are pretty low. I ask that if you have any resources to spare, you help out individuals or institutions in need. You can find people through GoFundMe, Patreon, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and there are other crowdfunding models that you can use to help either with people who are in dire need for, health needs or to support their art. Now, when it comes to institutions or foundations, I give to my local food bank as well as the Poor People's Campaign. There are freedom funds and other funds out there that you can contribute to try to help make a better world. So I hope you will. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You should visit my archives to check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and learn more about his art and painting. And you can listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at vmspod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.